This discussion is a very important discussion for anybody who intends to marry or is married. Both of them will need to know what are vows that we give during marriages and what do they mean and why must we be committed to them. On this first talk, we want to ask the question, what's a vow? You know, in Psalms chapter 15, verse 4, it says, a man of integrity, a man who will go to the sanctuary, is a man who makes a vow, then discovers that to keep that vow is going to put him into trouble. He still goes ahead and keeps the vow. That's the man we call a man of integrity. Anybody who thinks that once he has an excuse, he can stop it, according to Psalms 15, is not a person going to heaven, person of the sanctuary. And I think that's important to understand as we discuss marriage vows, that God says, do not make a vow. Because if you make a vow, then you must keep it. Because any man of integrity, any woman of integrity will keep the vow, even when keeping the vow actually hurts. I want us to go through a number of verses that talk about this subject of vows. You know, Psalm 76, verse 11 says, make vows to the Lord, your God, and fulfill them. Let all the neighboring lands bring gifts to the one to be feared. Again, make vows to the Lord, your God, and fulfill them. Not to make a vow is not very good, because it means you have no commitment, you have not made a commitment. But to make a vow and not fulfill it is worse. So in terms of rating people, the best person is a person who thinks ahead, makes a commitment, and keeps it. That's the best person. Second best person is a person who does not make any vow, because he is not sure he will not keep it. The worst person is a person quick to make a vow and has no intention of keeping it. You know, the psalmist is saying, you must fulfill it. Proverbs 20:25 is saying, it is a trap to dedicate something rashly and not later to consider one's vows. In other words, he's a person who makes a commitment, then wonders, what did I do? Should I have made such a promise? Now, surely you can't hold me responsible for that. I didn't even think. I was too young. I was too quick. I was too much in love. The Word of God is saying that is wrong. And that's why we need to explain to every couple before they marry the meaning of the vows they are making, so that when they make it, they actually will keep to it. Ecclesiastes chapter 5 verse 4 is saying, when you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. He has no pleasure in fools. Fulfill your vows. In other words, the Bible is calling people who make a commitment and don't keep it. They are saying they are fools. When you make a vow to God, do not delay to fulfill it. You know, some people do not completely refuse to do something, but they will not do it when they promise to do it. But they say, no, I'm going to do it at my own time. No. If you promise to do something by 3 o'clock, then keep to the message. Keep to your commitment. And we are saying, even in marriage, when you enter into a marriage, you are entering into a commitment. And then you do not therefore do what you want when you want. It's what you promised. That's what we are talking about. Ecclesiastes 5:5 is saying, it is better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. What a good advice. It is far much better not to make a vow than to make one and not fulfill it. Of course, this message is better for people who are not yet married, because then they can think about it. But even those of us who are married have to know that we have actually entered into a commitment. Then Matthew 5:33 says, again, you have heard it was said to the people of long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. Which is really quoting, the New Testament is quoting the Old Testament. And I wanted to say, when we come to marriage, marriage vows are vows like any other, but even more important, because these are vows that God wants us to make and to keep. And it will be important that we think about it and make a commitment to keep to that kind of commitment. Now, what vows do we make when you go to a wedding? Most weddings, Pentecostal, Protestant, Catholic, have certain vows that traditionally have been given. The first one is you make a commitment by saying, "I take you to be my wedded wife." If you're a man, if you're a woman, you say, "I take you to be my wedded husband." And we will come back to it. But that's a commitment you are making. You have said you have made a commitment to have this guy as your husband. Second vow, I make a commitment to have and to hold. From now, you will be mine, to have and to hold. And again, we'll take time to discuss what that means. Thirdly, from this day onwards, from this day forward, in other words, you are creating a starting date that it is from now. You can't say later, but I didn't mean to start just now. Whoever designed the vow says it's from a particular time. Next, it says that you have to do it for better or for worse. In other words, you are consciously saying in advance, I'm committed to you when things are good and when things are bad. As if that's not enough. He goes on to say, for richer or for poorer. That tells you if we end up becoming very rich, I will not throw you to pick another girl. If we end up very poor, I will not drop you because you are an expense. I have committed myself, whether rich or poor, to be with you. And then the other one says, in sickness and in health. And that is tested quite a lot of times. Because you marry young, versatile, beautiful, then over time, the vagaries of nature work on you. But right from the beginning, you made a commitment. You made a commitment for in sickness and in health. I'm committed. And then it goes on to say, what will I do? To love and to cherish. In other words, I can assure you, irrespective of the circumstances, I'm committing myself to love you and to cherish you all the days of our lives. And then goes on to say, I have given you the start date. Let me give you the end date of this arrangement. It is at your death do us part. In other words, there's not going to be in between anything other than our commitment. I am committed to you until death do us part. Then some two items that come afterwards. One of them is, I am doing all this according to God's holy ordinance. In other words, I am biblical. I'm entering into a biblical marriage. I am not going to run marriage the Kikuyu way. I'm not going to run it the Eskimo way. I'm going to run it the biblical way, God's ordinance, the way it is written. And then finally, you say, and this is my solemn vow. In case you think I was joking, I now make a commitment that is a vow I'm making. In all that, we really have to think clearly, what are we actually saying? I think that we now will go item by item and start with the first one. I take you to be my wedded wife. I take you to my wedded husband. What are you really committing yourself to? You are saying it's a voluntary union. I'm saying this arrangement is a voluntary union. And that's the first thing we want to look at. Were you forced? Did circumstances force you? Did your parents force you? That's not a Christian marriage. In a Christian marriage, we declare before everybody that is a voluntary thing. I take you to be my wedded wife. Means I am voluntarily doing it. In other words, we need to come to where we agree. It's a decision we have made. We have not been forced. And we are capable of making that kind of an arrangement. And it's an important thing to understand. Although I'm talking like it's a covenant, a Christian marriage is not a covenant. There's a difference between a covenant and a contract. A contract is something where two people agree obligations and benefits out of this arrangement, and then they also agree an escape clause. How shall we terminate this contract? But a marriage is not a contract, it's a covenant. A covenant is an agreement between two parties to be committed to the relationship for life. We talk about a covenant when we are talking about something that cannot be broken. Also, we are talking about a covenant comprises the principles of integrity that guarantee that a relationship will be preserved. In other words, we are doing it in integrity. It's a covenant, not a contract. And then thirdly, we are saying in keeping of covenant shows your character. The reason I'm coming to you to have this arrangement is because I trust you, and you trust me. It's a covenant. And I think it will be important for us to talk about it. It involves faithfulness, promise keeping, reliability, and loyalty. I'm going to be loyal to you. That's what it means. A lot of people are coming to marriage as a contract. Once it's a contract, you must have an escape clause. Once it's a contract, we can talk about whether you have fulfilled this, you didn't fulfill this. In a covenant, I will do my part even if you don't do your part. I have made a commitment to you irrespective of what you do yourself. In a contract, if you don't do your part, any court of law will free me from this arrangement. But in a covenant, I am making a commitment, and it involves jealously protecting the object of your love. In a covenant, you are so committed. In fact, in the Bible, you need even to cut. You need to cut an animal. So it costs something, and we need to understand the wedding is a sign of the marriage covenant. When we wed, we actually are declaring we have a covenant. It brings people together, both physically and spiritually, into this covenant. So what are we saying? When I say I take you as my wedded wife, it means I am covenanting with you, not contracting with you, but covenanting with you, that I will be with you, irrespective of what you do. It's not conditional. It is that I'm now yours for life. Whether you do good, don't do good, I'm committed. And I'm not suggesting that the other party should not play their part. They also made a covenant. A covenant is two people doing it together. But the that difference in a covenant is that it's done before God. A contract can be just two people arranging. But in a covenant, it's done in prayer. So there are two parties, but actually three. There is a man, there is a woman, and they are doing it in the presence of God. So that we are talking about a covenant. And so you cannot break a covenant without the third party, God, being a part of what you are doing. And I want to ask you about your marriage. Are you in a contract or in a covenant? If you're in a covenant, do you understand that commitment means there is no excuse you can use in order to leave the other party? But the next thing that you say in this covenant or in this vow is to have and to hold. To have and to hold. I take you as my wedded wife to have and to hold. And here are two words: to have and to hold. It's a old English of saying we are going to be physically one. It means we shall be people who are married and physically one. I am told by lawyers that even if you wed, if you don't end up consummating your marriage or having sex, that marriage, they say in legal terms, is void ab initio. And you can see clearly here you made a commitment. Void ab initio means it never existed from the beginning. The judge will give you automatic divorce because you never, although you made a commitment, you never consummated the arrangement. Here we are saying in the wedding, you are being told, no. It's not just I'm taking you as a married wife. I will hold you. I will have you and hold you. In other words, we will be physically together. We will be physically one. And it will be important for marriages to understand what that means, to have and to hold. If you have sex with somebody you are not committed to, we call it adultery and fornication. When you have one with a wedded wife, it's allowed by the scriptures. If you have sex with somebody you are committed to, is something that is blessed. I want to go to the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 7, just to see that this holding is a biblical term. Verse 2 says, but since sexual immorality is occurring, each man should have sexual relations with his own wife, and each woman with her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to the husband. The wife does not have authority over her own body, but yields it to her husband. In the same way, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but yields it to his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Marriage is a permission for physical oneness. What is really Paul saying in this commitment? So that you understand what you commit yourself to when you say, you are my wedded wife to have and to hold. Paul is saying your body is not your own. You are surrendering your own body to your spouse. You must have sex as married couple, and that is expected because you made a commitment in public that you will have, he can have you and hold you, except for the following conditions. There are times when Paul gives exceptions, and he says, when you have agreed with one another to skip, obviously that's different, but it is not one party refusing. It is both of you discussing to skip it. Second condition we have just read in that passage is, if you're actually praying, you can agree for this next 1 week, we are going to be in prayer. And because of the prayer, we will not hold each other. Number 3, the condition is for a short time. Here we read it, very interesting. Paul thought that once he gives the exception, you might think the exception can happen for a year. No. He says it has to be for a short time, and he gives the reason. Because if you make it long, even if you are in prayer, the devil can use that to make you end up in adultery. So it has to be for a short time. But there is absolutely no excuse why you can go outside your marriage for sex, even if your wife has broken the vow and has refused. You must stay inside your marriage, because you see, this condition can make you start thinking, then it's okay. My wife is the one who is not available. I can go to another woman. Then you forget the commandment says, thou shalt not commit adultery, and doesn't give excuses. But in a good marriage, you do not have sex just when you want. You have it when your spouse wants. And the best thing is you have it when both of you want. So the hierarchy is, in a best marriage, the two of you will be wanting. In a second best marriage, you have it even only one of you wants it. In a bad marriage, you refuse to have it. And that's really what is really bad. So when you make a commitment on the wedding day that to have and to hold, what you are actually saying is that from now onwards, I'm going to be available to my wife, I'm going to be available to my husband, and my body is not my body means even when I'm not interested, I'll do it for her sake, because that's really what we are learning. And it will be important in this commitment to understand that sometimes we do not spend enough time explaining these things to people. Already the two things you have to look at, that is a voluntary union. Do we explain this to the people that are getting married? Do we explain that marriage is not something you can force people? You cannot tell somebody you must marry this one. Even if you suggested to your son that this is a good girl, finally, the son must be the one to say, yes, I'm willing. But although we are saying it's voluntary, I would like also to say, if you're a Christian, you need to see God's voice. If you are saying this is a good girl, if your mother is also saying that's a good girl, what has God said? A Christian learns to hear God's voice. A Christian learns to listen to God. So that's what it means. So that means then when you come to marriage, it means that you take your wife, not as your choice, but as God's choice for you. And therefore you stay with her. Even if she has done things that annoy you, you go back to God. You say, God, you gave me this wife. Help me to know how to handle her, even if she is not behaving right. Because you voluntarily accepted God's choice for yourself. You maybe you wanted somebody else, but the Lord convicted you and showed you this is the right one. So you take them. And that's a very, very important thing in marriage, to learn that your wife, your spouse, is not your choice. It's God's choice for you. And if it's God's choice, then He'll make it possible for you to live with her, even if she is Mama Kali or Baba Kali, very difficult person to live with. God will give you wisdom to learn how to deal with the person that is difficult to live with. Because if it's God's choice, then God will give you the ability to live with him. And I think that's one of the things that's bringing up marriage, because you are starting to think, I don't like her anymore. Not understanding that this is a commitment you made before God. We said it's a covenant. If you made it before God, then don't have her because you like her. You don't have her because she is beautiful. You love her because you made a commitment. You know, the Bible says thou shalt love your husband, love your wives, but it doesn't give conditions. It just is a command. You must love your wives. What that means is that before the wedding, you marry the girl because you love her. After the wedding, you love her because you married her. Let me repeat. Before the wedding, you marry her because you love her. After the wedding day, now you made a commitment, you will have to love her. Any reason? Not because her ugali is good, but because you married her. It's a command to love your husband, to love your wife. If it's a command, it means you will do it, not because you feel like, but because you are obeying God's command. You will not be in good books with God when you disobey him and you made a commitment right from the beginning. You know the reason why I keep telling people that divorce is a difficult thing, and we'll come to it at a later stage. It's a difficult thing. Is because 3 reasons. Number 1, the Bible tells you when you make a vow, keep it. You've just read it now. Number 2, you actually made a vow in the presence of people. And that's very important. So the first reason why you must keep in the marriage, however difficult it is because you made a vow. Number 2, because God says you shouldn't divorce. Number 3, you need to stay there because God promises that the person can change. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 says, even if your wife is a non-Christian, if you're a Christian, stay there. How do you know that God will not use you to win her over to the Lord? Those are 3 reasons why you keep with the commitment. And then number 2, the other one is you have to have and to hold, means you have physically one, and then you are not allowed to move out of that marriage. Anytime you have sex after that marriage, you are bringing a condemnation on yourself, and that will be something that is not quite right. So it's important to understand that when you are making vows, don't make them in a hurry, think clearly. But once you have made them, you are now in jail. You must make your jail good. So since you know you can't leave her, why don't you do your best to help her, to encourage her, to win her over? Because now you know that you are not going to leave her. If you really want a good time for yourself, you must create circumstances and opportunities to improve your spouse, so that in them improving, you are also improving yourself. You know, in other words, in her welfare lies your own welfare. So do your best. When you buy your wife a good dress and everybody is commenting about the good dress, it's you getting the joy. So it's important to make a commitment to do your best for your spouse, even if they themselves are not doing. The Bible actually says in Romans chapter 12 that when you continue loving someone who is not lovable, it's like you are putting coals of fire on them. And when you do that, you burn them up back to friendship. That's a promise that everybody needs to claim. When you love somebody who is not lovable, love somebody who is not loving you back, God is promising you are putting coals of fire, and they'll burn him up until he changes. So the fact that your first 2-3 years of marriage have difficulty does not mean it will continue. The fact that the last 20 years of marriage have been difficult, it does not mean it will continue. You need to come to where you know very well that God is, in his own wisdom, is going to work on it and get this one improved. Thank you very much, and God bless you. The third thing that we learn is called from this day onwards. You make a commitment to live at a certain time, to commit at a certain time. And here the emphasis I want to give is marriage is a joining in and a leaving. That's what you are trying to say. From this day onwards means you are announcing to everybody there will be a change. You are staying with your parents. Now you are going to be changed. You'll be staying with your wife. You'll be staying with your husband. And I think that's a very important thing to understand, that when you come to a wedding and you say from this day onwards, we must see a difference. And three things have to happen. Number one, you must live physically. You can't stay with your parents after the marriage. In other words, you marry your wife and put her in the same house with your husband. Then the word of God will not be true. Genesis chapter 2 is saying, for this reason, a man shall live on the particular date that you are talking about. So it means that a wedding is a declaration of independence from your parents. You cannot continue being with them. Parents, but not just parents, even others, from this day onwards, you have actually left them. Let me just look at Mark chapter 10, verse 1, which quotes Genesis. Verse 7 says, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother. You know, many marriages are suffering basically because the man or the woman never left. They do not commit themselves to their marriage because part of them has remained back. You know, there's a barrier to a good relationship when you are not beginning a separate new unit. And this will act as a barrier. You always think, what will mom say? What will dad say? And yet you are in a marriage. You need to have, the wedding day is a wedding of saying, kwaheri, bye-bye, to your own parents. That does not mean you don't respect them, don't honor them. The commandments are very clear. The commandments say you must honor your father and your mother. So it therefore means even after the wedding, you must still honor them. Obey them, not expected. You have left their home, now you obey your spouse. You have left their home, now you obey your wife, or you obey your husband. So it means a wedding day from this day onwards is a declaration to the parents that they no longer can give you commands. They can give you advice, but they can't give you commands. And it's important to understand from this day onwards, something must change. And you know, this departure must be physical. I believe part of the problem is when you marry and then you go staying next to your mother. Every time something is happening, they hear your voices loud, they start calling the husband back. What was that new woman doing to you? Now, you can't end up with a good marriage when you are physically not separated from your parents. You need to find a way of creating some distance that allows you to start a separate unit. There will be now two homes, your parents' home and yours. One of the ways of helping that new unit to survive is physical separation. Why can't you, even if you're in the same compound, why can't you put a fence between the two homes so that when visitors are coming, they have to make up their mind whether they're visiting the son or visiting the father. It needs to be very clear. So when you say from this day onwards, during the wedding, you are saying you will see a difference. I'm physically going to move, and physical movement. But the other thing you are talking about is social movement. You need to be recognized as a unit. That's why you do it in the open for people to know. This woman is now married. Earlier, if somebody saw the son or so-and-so with a girl, says, what is he doing with somebody's daughter? But now that you have done it openly, you have left your home openly, people know that you are now a social unit. You have socially created a new home. There is physical movement, but you also need a social movement where you are now seen to be together. That's why in some cultures, the wife is called by the husband's name. It's a way of creating this social unit. Every culture has to have its own way of declaring the new unit is a social unit on its own. So that's thirdly, financial living. You need to find a way of creating your own income. You cannot claim to have left your parents when they are the ones paying your bills. They say whoever pays the piper determines the tune. It will be important to understand that for you to be a separate unit, you must have your own economic unit where you raise your own money. Even if your parents are very rich and you are very poor, be happily poor because you are now together. Many marriages are suffering because the parents are financing it and therefore calling the shots. You cannot say from this day onwards and then continue being financially dependent on on your parents, and it will be important that you understand that. And thirdly, it's not just physical living, financial living, social living. It also be emotional living. It will be important that from this onwards, when you have an issue, you don't share it with your mother, you share it with your wife. She will be your emotional support. You know, there's something people are calling emotional infidelity. This is when you share your emotional problems, and when you're emotionally out of balance, you run to someone. Even if, especially if they're opposite sex, even if you are not married to them, they are taking away the role of your spouse. Your spouse is supposed to be your emotional partner. And so you make a commitment to be with him. So when you say in the wedding day, I take you as my wedded wife, to have and to hold, and then you say from this day onwards, it means this is the time I'm beginning a new life. And you will see it by the way I will create a new unit that's not tied up to the past. But you don't just leave your parents. You have to leave old girlfriends and old boyfriends, people that had a right on your life. They need to be on the wedding day. If they don't come, send them pictures and tell them from now onwards I'm not available. It will be important that they understand the departure. From this new onwards, I'm a different unit. And it means the girl has to ensure that people who don't support her marriage, she doesn't keep close to them. How would you keep close to somebody who doesn't like your husband? Within no time, it will be very clear that they'll keep reminding you of how the weaknesses of your husband. How will your marriage survive when you have not left those kind of people? The same thing with the husband. You can't continue with the boys who keep making fun of your wife. You have to create a distance. Create new friends. Your new friends now must be the friends of both. Get the friends of the wife whom the husband accepts. Get the friends of the husband whom the wife accepts. Let them be the new friends. Create new associations, especially of people that are married and are Christian, so that you can help to move your marriage forward. That's really what you are saying when you talk about this. Thank you very much.